Hi, please excuse how much of a mess my hair is. I have just washed it. A couple of weeks ago I started a new little series where I'm going to start reviewing the Harry Potter books. I started late last year, it was about November, rereading the Harry Potter books. And I thought that I now have a lot of thoughts as I'm rereading them. I haven't read them for years. And now that I have a lot more thoughts about them, I thought it would be a good idea just to make videos about each book and I can kind of share my thoughts now rereading them. I've already reviewed The Philosopher's Stone, the first book. I will put a link up there, whichever side, I can never remember, and in the description if you want to go and watch that. These are all kind of spoilery reviews, like I'm not holding back on spoilers because I assume that a lot of people have read them or have watched the films by now and know the plot. If you don't want any spoilers, then come back once you've read them. So today I'm going to be talking about The Chamber of Secrets. So The Chamber of Secrets is interesting because I remember always really loving the book as a kid, but it's only probably because I read like the first three when I was a kid. So I didn't have a lot to compare it to. But the film was always one of my favourite films of the series. It's still one of my favourites now, like I love watching it, and I don't know if that's because it's just for nostalgia, like why I still love it so much, more than the story, because now that I've reread the book, there are a lot of flaws to the story, and kind of, not even flaws necessarily, but things that just bug me a bit about it. So I'm going to talk about the things that bugged me first, and then I'll end with all of the things that I like. So I went through the whole book before I started recording this and looked at all my notes and stuff, and I have made a load of notes on my phone. I also watched Emma Book's, her review of The Chamber of Secrets from a couple of years ago. I agree with so many of her points, so I'll also put her video in the description. You should go and watch that too, because she has a lot of really good points that I didn't really consider. One thing that she talks about is how stupid Ron and Harry are to decide to fly the car to Hogwarts literally instantly when they can't get through the barrier, like when they can't get through the wall to get to platform 9 3/4. They kind of panic. Like, oh my god, what if Mum and Dad can't get back and we won't get to Hogwarts, we can't tell them, let's go and fly their car. They don't wait to see if they get back. Like, surely Hogwarts won't be annoyed at them for not turning up on time if they say that the barrier wouldn't let them through. Instead, they decide to go and fly the car without even just waiting to see if Molly and Arthur get back through. Pretty stupid. I also want to know, I want like a short story or something, what Molly and Arthur did once they realised that their car was missing, because surely they would get back to where their car was parked and it's not there. Like, did they think it's stolen? Did they go and try and find the nearest fireplace so they could use the Flu network? Like, how did they get back with their car gone? They can't apparate, surely, because that's using magic, but then if they're adults they can use magic outside of school maybe. I don't know. I want to know how they reacted when they realised that their car is gone and Ron and Harry didn't get on the train. Like, there's a lot of holes here that weren't covered and I want to know what actually happened once the car was gone. Oh yeah, and another thing that she talked about as well is the fact that they rely so much, like wizards in general, rely so much on wands that I've never really thought about this, but without wands, they're pretty useless. Like, I know she was saying, like Emma was saying in her video, that a lot of the kind of powerful wizards can conjure up magic without a wand. But most wizards need a wand to do magic, and without their wand, they are completely useless. We see this when Ron breaks his wand, and he is useless without it. So, as great as wizards are, they are pretty useless without their wand. So let's go into some of the things that bugged me a little bit. I'm going to be looking down at my phone because it's where my notes are. The first thing that bugged me is that we get way too much of a summary of the previous book. I know it's only the second book, like I'm currently reading The Goblet of Fire and there's no summary, or there might be kind of like a couple of sentences if something important comes up that you need to remember from a previous book. But in this one, there's practically an entire page of just summary from the previous book. Page 4 and 5, so we're barely into the book by this point. We get so much summary. Like, let me read it, and if it goes on ages, I'll speed it up. At the age of 1, Harry had somehow survived a curse from the greatest dark sorcerer of all time, Lord Voldemort, whose name most witches and wizards still feared to speak. Harry's parents had died in Voldemort's attack, but Harry had escaped with a lightning scar, and somehow nobody understood why Voldemort's powers had been destroyed the instant he had failed to kill Harry. So Harry had been brought up by his dead mother's sister and her husband. He had spent 10 years with the Dursleys, never understanding why he kept making odd things happen without meaning to, believing the Dursleys' story that he had got his scar in a car crash which had killed his parents. And then, exactly a year ago, Hogwarts had written to Harry and the whole story had come out. Harry had taken up his place at a wizard school where he and his scar were famous, and now the school was over and he was back with the Dursleys for the summer, back to being treated like a dog that had rolled in something smelly. My god, that is so much recap. Like, I understand that you need to remember what happened, but surely if you've read the first book, you're gonna remember. Like, you can go into this book and remember as things are happening what happened in the first book. I don't like tons of recap. I guess because it's like a children's book, it will help you remember if you've forgotten, but my god, so much recap. A lot of these things, by the way, are just little tiny things that bug me. They're not all massive things. They're nothing that like makes the book bad. They're just little tiny bugbears that I had while reading it that I was just like, that's very weird. So the next thing is that Harry and Ron have been friends for an entire year by this point. They should know a lot about each other. And he's met at least Molly, maybe not Arthur, but I know he's met Molly. He still knows nothing about Ron. Like, there's a bit where he is talking to Ron and he's like, so what does your dad do then? What does he do at the ministry? And he knows nothing about Ron's family. Like, surely Ron would have mentioned at some point over the past year that his dad works for the Ministry of Magic. But I guess we need to learn about what he does too, so that's how they do it. Like, Harry asks Ron what his dad does, and that way we learn about it too. It's just a bit funny that they've known each other for an entire year and Harry is still asking him questions about his parents and like what his parents do. Another thing is that when Harry is still at home with the Dursleys, he talks about not being able to do magic outside of school, yet he is allowed to go and practice Quidditch, which is magic. Very magic. Like, you can't, like the car you can make invisible, you can't make yourself invisible when you're on your broom. There's a bit, I can't find what page it is now, but there's a bit where he's just like, oh, I guess I'll just go and practice some Quidditch. Surely if a muggle sees a boy flying in the air on a broom, they're gonna kind of be a bit concerned or scared or confused. So why is Quidditch allowed when no magic is allowed outside of school, but they're still allowed to do Quidditch? Another thing, when Ron and Harry are in the car flying to Hogwarts, Ron says when they're in the air, he's like, now we just need to look out for aeroplanes. Aren't aeroplanes muggle transportation? Why would Ron know about aeroplanes? Surely they're a muggle thing, but then they have cars, but then even then it's a magic car. I don't know. Do wizards know about aeroplanes? Like, do they use them? Surely they can just like teleport to different places, like apparate or whatever to different places. I thought that was a bit strange. Like, they don't even know what dentists are, so why does he know about aeroplanes? How does Moaning Myrtle make a splash in the toilet when she flies down into the toilet and all the water splashes out? How does she do that when she has no actual mass? Also, I love the physics of, at the end of the book, when Fawkes is carrying Ron, Harry and Lockhart out of the Chamber of Secrets. I love the physics of just a little phoenix carrying 3 people by its tail feathers. And then finally, one thing that really, really bugs me, and this is one thing that I don't like about the story, is I don't like how Ron, Harry and Hermione jump to the conclusion almost instantly that Hagrid is the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets. Harry is seeing all these visions, like he's watching Tom Riddle go and talk to Hagrid, and he looks suspicious as hell. Like, why doesn't he think that this guy, like, I know he doesn't know who he is yet, But why doesn't he think, oh, this guy talking to Hagrid in this vision I saw is very suspicious? But they instantly jump on the fact that Hagrid is the one that opened it. They're not even like, oh, maybe Hagrid is the one who opened it. Hermione is just like, you know what this means? Hagrid is the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets. And it made me think, this is why none of them are Hufflepuff, because their loyalty is not very good. Like, they're not loyal to their friends at all. I guess, I don't know, there's just so many points, even later on as well. I'll talk about that when I actually review those books, but there's so many points where you can see them not being loyal at all. And this is one of those moments, like Hagrid is their friend and they instantly just throw him under the bus by saying he is the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets. He is the one who committed this massive crime and killed students. Like, they don't have very much belief in their friends. But despite all of that, I do like this book. Those are just little things that bug me about it, but there are a lot of things that I do like about this book, especially when comparing it to the film. So one thing I love is how sensitive the Dursleys are to anything to do with magic. It makes me laugh so much. There's a bit on page 2 where Harry is he's asked to make breakfast, like I think Petunia asks him to make breakfast for everyone, and Dudley asks Harry to pass him the frying pan because it's got more bacon in it and he wants to eat all the bacon. And Dudley says, pass the frying pan. And Harry says, you've forgotten the magic word. And then the Dursleys just freak out. Like, he said the word magic and oh my god, hang on. I think I'll just read this section because it's just so funny. Pass the frying pan. You've forgotten the magic word, said Harry irritably. The effect of this simple sentence on the rest of the family was incredible. Dudley gasped and fell off his chair with a crash that shook the whole kitchen. Mrs. Dursley gave a small scream and clapped her hands to her mouth. Mr. Dursley jumped to his feet, veins throbbing in his temples. I meant please, said Harry quickly. I didn't mean, what have I told you, thundered his uncle, spraying spit over the table, about saying the M word in our house. How dare you threaten Dudley, roared Uncle Vernon, pounding the table with his fist. I warned you, I will not tolerate the mention of your abnormality under this roof. Oh, it just makes me laugh so much. Like, all he said was, what's the magic word? And they just explode. I just love how sensitive they are about magic. One thing I noticed in this is that it shows a definite kind of difference in wealth between wizards, and like there is still almost like a class system within the wizarding world. So you see people like the Malfoys, where they're super rich, they live in a mansion, like they're proper high class. You also see Harry having so much money from his parents. Like, his parents must have been loaded because Harry has so much money. But then you also see people like the Weasleys where they're struggling to get by. Like, when Ron breaks his wand, he's worried because his family won't be able to afford a new one for him. Harry seems pretty oblivious to this. Harry has a lot of money. We see this in the first book where he goes to his vault and we find out that he has loads of money and he kind of buys all of the stuff on the trolley when they're on the train. But other than that, Harry seems pretty oblivious to the fact that his friends' family are poor. Like, they have no money. They have so many kids to try and buy for, and you kind of see them as well struggling where the reading list is so long and they have to try and buy the books, and they have a lot of hand-me-downs and like second-hand books and things. I mean, maybe Harry is used to having nothing. Like, he's grown up having nothing. He has never spent money. The Dursleys are quite rich, I think. Like, they have a lot of money, they're quite upper class. But Harry has never had a look into this. Harry has never had his own money to spend. He's always lived on like rations because they refuse to spend any of their money on him. So he's used to being poor as well, which is maybe why I think he doesn't really notice that the Weasleys are also poor, because he's so used to that way of living and they have so much more than he's ever had. So maybe in his eyes, they're not that poor. But you just see some small things that make you realise the difference between how much money Harry's family, or like Harry has, maybe without even knowing it, compared to the Weasleys. There's a part on, let me just find it. There's a part on page 60. They are going to the Weasleys' vault, and it says, Harry enjoyed the breakneck journey down to the Weasleys' vault, but felt dreadful, far worse than he had in Knockturn Alley when it was opened. There was a very small pile of silver sickles inside, and just one gold galleon. Mrs. Weasley felt right into the corners before sweeping the whole lot into her bag. Harry felt even worse than when they reached his vault. He tried to block the contents from view as he hastily shoved handfuls of coins into a leather bag. I don't know. Can Harry not offer to help? Would it be rude for Harry to offer help to the Weasleys if he knows he has so much money that he's literally blocking his wealth from their view? I know he probably feels guilty about it, but I don't know, would it be rude if he offered the Weasleys help? I don't know, it's just, there's a very stark contrast between that, between the fact that they go to the Weasleys' vault and she's literally trying to scrape into the corners to see if there's anything left inside, and then Harry is just kind of throwing handfuls of money into his wallet. Like, it's almost looked upon like he feels sorry for them because they have no money. I don't know. I don't know what I think. Let me know what your thoughts are on that, because I don't really know how to explain what I think of it, but I don't know. It's very strange. You can just definitely see the difference in wealth between the families. And I just feel like Harry could have maybe offered to help give them some money, considering he has a vault full of money just for himself. So this book is where I start to see the beginnings of why people started to ship Harry and Draco. I have never shipped Harry and Draco at all. I don't really get it, but I can kind of see in this book the beginnings of why people started to ship them. So there's a part on page 53 where Draco is talking about Harry constantly. Like, he says here, Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year, special permission from Dumbledore so he could play for Gryffindor. He's not even that good, it's just because he's famous. Famous for having a stupid scar on his forehead. Everyone thinks he's so smart. Wonderful Potter with his scar and his broomstick. And then his dad says, you have told me this at least a dozen times already. And he talks about Harry. If he's said the same thing over and over again, he talks about him and he must be thinking about him a lot. So you can see why in this book people started to ship Harry and Draco, because Draco thinks about Harry an awful lot. Another thing I like about this, especially compared to the film, is Colin Creevey. So I really love Colin Creevey as a character. In the film, I think they made him seem really irritating. They made him just seem like a sheep, like he follows Harry around everywhere and he's just kind of like this annoying little kid. But I actually really love Colin Creevey in the book. I think he's quite similar to Hermione in a way, where Hermione has come from a Muggle family and so has Colin Creevey. You can see that he has because he says that his dad is a milkman. He reminds me of Hermione in a lot of ways, where he is just so excited to be at the school. Like, he is constantly talking about how exciting everything is. And I just think he's really sweet. I think he's just genuinely excited to be at this school. And he is just kind of so amazed by everything. Also, I think the reason he adores Harry so much is because Harry is this prominent figure in this world that Colin is now a part of. And I think he just idolises him a little bit. I think he's just kind of, he just looks to him as a role model. So there's a bit on page 101 where Colin is talking and when he asks Harry for a picture of him, and Harry's like, why do you want a picture of me? He's like,
so I can prove I've met you, said Colin Creevey eagerly, edging further towards him. I know a lot about you, everyone's told me. I know how you survived when you-know-who tried to kill you and how you disappeared and everything, and how you've still got a lightning scar on your forehead, and a boy in my dorm said if I develop the film in the right position, the pictures will move. Colin drew a great shuddering breath of excitement and said, it's brilliant here, isn't it? I never knew all of the odd stuff I could do was magic till I got the letter from Hogwarts. My dad's a milkman, so he couldn't believe it either. So I'm taking loads of pictures to send home to him, and it'd be really good if I had one of you. Maybe your friend could take it and I could stand next to you, and then maybe you could sign it.
he's just so cute. He wants to take pictures to send home to his dad because his dad is really proud that he's gone to this school. And I love them so much. Like, that's the reason why he's taking pictures everywhere, is just because he wants to send them home to his dad. And he's just so sweet. I just love him so much. He's just so adorable. And the film really just made him this irritating little kid when all he really wants to do is just be excited that he's got into this school, and he just wants to send some pictures home to his dad, and I just love him so much. Another person that I still don't particularly like, but it makes me want to cry, is Filch and his backstory. So you see him, like, Harry looks in his desk and he's got a letter for the class about, like, magic for beginners. It just makes me so sad. Like, he is a squib, which means somebody who never had magical abilities, and he just so desperately wants to be magical, and I think that's why he's so miserable. Like, he works in this school surrounded by incredible wizards and witches, and he never got to do that himself because he never had, like, he never possessed the magical abilities. That just makes me so sad. So one thing the book does really well is that it gives you signs of things that are to come, whether it's in, like, later in this book or later in the whole series. And obviously by this point we don't know anything about Horcruxes or anything, and it kind of gives little signs of things that are to come. So an example of this is like an example of something that actually happens later on in the book that you get signs of all throughout the book that I think you don't get in the film, is that we see signs that Ginny isn't okay, and we see her crying her eyes out at several points, like once big things happen. So like the writing is on the wall and people find out that the chamber has been opened. Like, after all of this has happened, Ginny is clearly upset, like she's crying all the time, and they also see her looking exhausted, like she just looks like she hasn't slept, and you kind of start to get an idea that something isn't right with Ginny. So I think later on then, when it is kind of told that Ginny has had such a big part in this whole thing with the chamber, it makes a bit more sense. In the film it almost seems a little bit random. It's just like, oh okay, it's Ginny, that's a bit random. But in the book you start to see Ginny unravel throughout the book, and then by the time it's shown to us that Ginny has had such a big part on opening the Chamber of Secrets, it kind of makes sense why she's been so upset throughout the whole year. I just really like that. I like little things that show you what's to come, like just little things that can help you piece together what is happening, and then when it actually does happen you think, okay, that's why Ginny was so upset. And an example of something that happens in this book where you get a sign of things that are to come later on in the series is you get the first glimpse at the idea that Harry has a part of Voldemort inside him. I think Hermione is the one that kind of tells him, and it's because he is hearing Parseltongue, like he's hearing the basilisk, and you hear Harry kind of speak Parseltongue for the first time, and they don't know why the hell he has this ability. And you kind of get the idea that Harry might have a bit of Voldemort inside him, despite us not knowing anything about Horcruxes yet. And it's a big kind of foreshadowing thing, or it kind of gives you a clue of what is to come later on in the books, even though we don't get to anything about Horcruxes until like Deathly Hallows. Maybe a bit before that actually. I think you get a little bit of it with Slughorn, like Harry is asking Slughorn later on about Horcruxes, but even so, you kind of get a first glimpse of the fact that Harry might actually have a piece of Voldemort inside him, and it sets it up to learn more about this later on. So that's all that I have to say about the Chamber of Secrets. Generally, I really like this book. Emma said in her video that not a lot really happens until they go down into the chamber, but I really like it. I think for me, I love that you get a lot of character development, you get a lot of you explore a lot of the characters' stories, and like you get a lot of little side plots that I just really enjoy. Obviously Lockhart plays such a big part in this book, and I kind of love Lockhart because he's just so flamboyant and so positive, but at the same time I hate him because he literally stole people's memories and kind of took them as his own. He's not a great guy, but I think just for how fun he is and just how fun he's written, that's just quite a fun thing about this book. But yeah, generally I really enjoy this book. So in the next video in this little series, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be talking about The Prisoner of Azkaban, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't watched my review of The Philosopher's Stone, then I will make a playlist for all these videos, and also I'll put a link to it in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about The Chamber of Secrets, either the book or the film. Let's discuss it in the comments. Do you agree with anything that I've said in this review? Yeah, let me know. And I will see you soon with a new video.